So, today we're going to jump into a piece of writing that's over half a century old, but honestly, it feels like it could have been written this morning. We're digging into Drugs, a really fiery and provocative essay from 1970 by the famous author Gore Vidal. In it, he lays out this plan for America's drug problem that is, even now, pretty shocking.
And right out of the gate, this is the very first line of the essay. It's not a suggestion, it's a declaration. Vidal doesn't ease you into his argument at all. He just throws down the gauntlet with this incredibly radical idea, forcing you to immediately confront a totally different way of thinking about this stuff.
So how do you even begin to back up a claim that huge? Well, this wasn't just some throwaway line to get your attention. Vidal actually structured this as a serious policy proposal, and he immediately follows it up with a clear step-by-step plan for how it would actually work.
The real genius here is how he combines total access with total information. Step 1, you see, completely removes the profit motive for crime. But steps 2 and 3, that's the crucial counterbalance. He insists on what he calls heroic honesty. No more propaganda. He wants the labels to be brutally clear about what a drug does, good and bad, whether it's marijuana or something much more dangerous, like speed.
Okay, but this whole practical plan is really built on top of a deep philosophical argument. For Vidal, this isn't just about what works, it's about the fundamental principles of what it even means to be an American.
And there it is. That's the core of it. He directly connects the right to use drugs to the founding ideals of the United States. His argument is that the government's job is to protect you from other people, not to protect you from yourself. It's a really powerful and, deeply libertarian take on personal freedom.
Of course, I know what you're thinking. The immediate question that just pops into your head is, okay, but what about the obvious danger, right? What about the people who can't handle that kind of freedom and spiral into addiction? Doesn't the government have a duty to step in? Well, Vidal saw that question coming.
And his answer is intense. It's totally uncompromising. He argues that the right to determine your own life also includes the right to destroy it. In his view, a society that tries to remove any possibility of personal failure is a society that also removes any possibility of true liberty. It's a stark position for sure, but for him, it's the price of freedom.
Now for Vidal, this isn't just some abstract philosophical debate. He believes America has already run this exact experiment once before, with absolutely disastrous results, and has just completely failed to learn from it. He kicks off his historical argument with this incredibly sharp critique. He basically says America has cultural amnesia. We tend to forget our own past, and that dooms us to repeat our biggest mistakes. And the biggest mistake he has in mind? You guessed it, the prohibition of alcohol.
And when you look at it this way, the cause and effect he's talking about are crystal clear. Vidal points out that making booze illegal didn't stop people from drinking. What it did was launch the greatest crime wave in the country's history, caused thousands of deaths from bad unregulated alcohol, and it made people really cynical about the law itself. He sees a direct one-to-one parallel with the war on drugs.
And at the heart of this whole historical failure, according to Vidal, is this really basic psychological principle that the government just keeps ignoring. When you make something taboo, you don't get rid of the desire for it. You actually make it stronger. You make it more attractive, more mysterious, especially to young people.
All right, now we get to what is probably the most cynical and maybe the most powerful part of his entire argument. Vidal claims that the war on drugs isn't really a failure at all. In fact, for certain powerful groups, it's a massive success because it's so incredibly profitable. He sets this all up by asking a pretty simple question. When kids overdose on heroin, maybe heroin they only turned to because marijuana was hard to get, who's really responsible? Is it the mafia, the pushers? Vidal's answer is absolutely designed to shock you.
He lays the blame squarely at the feet of the U.S. government. And you have to ask, why? Because in his view, the government's own policies created the very black market that leads to these tragedies. And, he argues, they have a vested interest in keeping that system exactly the way it is.
And this is where he reveals this bizarre, unspoken partnership at the heart of the drug war. Get this, both law enforcement and organized crime actually benefit from drugs being illegal. Strong laws keep prices artificially high, which means huge profits for the mafia, and it justifies bigger budgets and more power for the narcotics bureaus. They need each other.
So think about it. His simple plan from the beginning just dismantles this entire corrupt ecosystem. If drugs are sold at cost, the profit is gone. The mafia has no business model. Addicts don't need to steal to pay for their next fix, and without a massive criminal empire to fight, the giant bureaucracy of the drug war would just become obsolete.
So If the solution seems so simple, why hasn't it been tried? Well, in his final paragraphs, Vidal gives this biting cultural diagnosis of why he believes America is just incapable of solving this problem rationally.
He argues that we have to stop thinking about the drug war as just a law enforcement problem and start seeing it for what it actually is, a massive industry. It's a business with jobs, budgets, and a ton of political power on the line.
I mean, to put it simply, the profit from selling illegal drugs is enormous. We all know that. But the profit and the economic activity that's generated by fighting that trade, from law enforcement to the prison system, is also colossal. You have two huge economic engines, and both of them depend on drugs staying illegal.
And this all leads to Vidal's final and pretty damning conclusion. He says the American character is basically defined by these two really powerful, interlocked forces. One, a puritanical obsession with sin and punishment, and two, an equally powerful obsession with making money. The drug war, well, it satisfies both of them perfectly.
And this is his pessimistic parting shot. He argues that because the drug war appeals so perfectly to America's dual obsessions with morality and profit, there's just no political will to ever dismantle it. Logic and evidence, they don't really stand a chance. And he predicted the problem would only get worse.
And that really leaves us with the final, unavoidable question. This essay is over 50 years old. We're living in an era of legalized marijuana and, at the same time, an ongoing opioid crisis. So how much of Vidal's cynical diagnosis from way back then was actually prophetic? What's changed, and maybe more importantly, what hasn't?